Oof, silly me. I made this whole video about my concerns of Sonic Frontier storytelling, but I only focus on what games did before. But lucky for us, we're slowly creeping into a new era of Sonic. At least I hope. This one has gone on for long enough. So, lucky for you Dissected fans, here's a bonus video. Consider it a younger annoying sibling of the last video. And, for the unlucky people who hate Dissected, sorry. Sonic Team has proudly proclaimed that Sonic Frontiers will be different from all 3D Sonic games we had before, as much as Sonic Adventure was from the classics. And hey, they might be right. Well, at least for half the game, I suppose. And even on a storytelling perspective, things seem to be changing a bit. The last video I completely forgot to mention a couple of things, a couple of those changes, such as the Tales channel starting to do a little world building and recent interviews with Takashi Iizuka reconfirming that from this point on, Sonic media are going to be way more intertwined and connected. Well, ignoring the Sonic movie universe, that is. Paramount isn't playing along. And good thing, too, they seem to understand the appeal of Sonic way better than Sonic Team, but whatever. So here's 3 different topics I wanted to discuss, all connected to being about the backbone of future Sonic storytelling, so huzzah! So, first of all, let's talk about the increased effort to a coherent world for the cast. After Legacy's era, distinctive, nostalgia-shaped and limbo sense of world building, I was ready for something new, something a little more solid and defined again. Then we got to Sonic Forces, and something started to happen. And particularly, Sega of America started meddling with the story a little bit, as we found some early beta versions of the scripts that contained commentary from Aaron Webber, of all people, already calling them out for a lot of its problems. And later we received those prequel comics. Now, those comics have always fascinated me. It's basically Sega admitting that their story is so broken that they need to release this extra material to try and clear it up. They recognize the story is broken, recognize that there's a demand for good storytelling from the fanbase, and they're willing to put money, time, and talent on the line to make up for it. So this is great. This is great news for us fans, and something we should really celebrate. However, there's always that eternal duality when it comes to Sonic. So while we got those prequel comics explicitly made to explain the story way better than the game did, they still end up having that same blunt, nothing-saying attitude about them, which kind of amuses me. But it isn't very helpful if you try to be interested in the story. Hey, at least the art is nice, I suppose. Man, I'm reading these comics, and I'm just imagining how the conversation between the comic team and Sonic Team must have been like. So, Sonic Team, how did Eggman get to Phantom Ruby? Like, oh, he just found it. Oh, you mean he found it as an artifact in a Temple of Doom in the jungle? Like, no. Oh, you mean he found it in a secret scientific file of an evil laboratory? Like, no, he just found it. Literally, it's just right there on his doorstep. Like, oh. Don't you just love it that those comic books explicitly made to clear up the story then still have this attitude as if they're a fed-up, impatient parent wanting to shut up their children? Mommy, why is Knuckles an army general now? Because he wants to! Just shut up! It's like, okay, great comic, good job. Story's much more clear now, well done, yes. But that was just the first step in a changing environment. Now there's Tales Tube, this new YouTube series where Tales goes out of his way to explain the universe more. It's mostly information that was already said in interviews and booklets before, but it's nice to hear it come out of the mouth of the actual characters, not to mention this is modern Sonic Team actually acknowledging what they said decades ago. The effort to try and create cohesion is on display. There's also this new interview with Iizuka at Sonic Stadium that contains a lot of very interesting information. It starts with him saying that the new Cocos are nothing like the Chow, but an entirely new creature with a specific backstory tying it specifically to the Starfall Islands. Bets! Take your bets, everyone! Who wants to bet that no matter what backstory the Cocos get, in the very next game we'll throw that shit in the trash and we'll just barf out the Cocos all over the new game, just like what they did with the Wisp before. Ah, Wisps. But back to the interview. In the interview, Iizuka expressed his desire to turn unity between the Sonic Prime, Sonic IDW, and the Sonic games, and making all of them part of the same universe, or at least that they feel like they are. So whether that means they just feel like they're made out of the same mold, but doing their own thing, like Archie Comic and Sonic CTM were, or if they're really coexisting with one another, as if all of them are just different episodes of the same series, like how the Sonic Boom TV show, 3DS games, and comics are all meant to be the same universe. We'll see how far it goes. But anyway, it's an attempt, which is good. I really want Sonic to get more of a coherent heart and soul to the series again, where all the characters and plot beats are connected to a central setting, a central world again. And the games seem to have zero interest in that, but the comics do. So if the comics are adapted into the game universe, I guess that's our coherent world again, so that's wonderful. And yet, I don't know. No matter how much Iizuka says that Prime, IDW, and the games will feel like one big happy family, I have a hunch that in 10 years' time, if you look back at this era, it's gonna feel like those three are just as much disconnected from each other as the movie universe is from them. Why? Well, because of topic number 2. Dimensions! Ah, Dimensions. Sonic's no stranger to those. I mean, heck, he had a whole Lego spin-off game about them. But even outside of Legos, the Emerald special stages are said to be in a different dimension. Fang/Knack's backstory is that he's a dimension hopper. There's Blaze the Cat and her soul dimension. No, Sonic's no stranger to the dimensions indeed. And boy does modern Sonic double down on this stuff. So much so that if you look at all the big fancy new characters we got this decade, with exception of the Zeddy, all of them are exactly the same character. Magical space being whose purpose it is to teleport Sonic into a void with portals leading to Green Hill Zone. All of them. Well, okay, Dodongo sends him to Seaside Hill instead, I guess. Big difference. So if the Dark Age can be criticized of doing the Sonic evil rival archetype a little too often with the characters, well, with the Legacy era Sonic, you get endless clones of Time Eater instead. Although, yeah, I suppose with some characters like Infinite, it's more like half dimension warping entity and half a Dark era character, I suppose. And now we have Sage, which to me seems to be like half Dodongo Part 2 and half Mephiles. So, Dodongolis, or Mephipa, whatever insult nickname is funnier. And this trend doesn't seem to be stopping. I mean, we have Sage, again, with dimensions being explicitly mentioned in the Frontiers trailer, but Sonic Prime is also confirmed to be about dimension hopping. So here, yet again, we have that infamous, wonderful Sonic Team duality at display, where in the same movement where Iizuka says that he wants to make the TV show, comics, and video games as close to one another as possible, they immediately throw in all this dimension hopping stuff so they can immediately have the greatest amount of distance away from each other as well. So despite Sonic IDW basically having created the heart, the soul, the central framework of Sonic's universe and where the characters live, how they interact with each other, how they fit together, I have a strong hunch that zero, nothing, napes, nada, not a single table scrap of Sonic IDW world building is going to make a single appearance in either the games or in Sonic Prime, as they'll mostly be just chucking the characters deep into another wacky, crazy dimension, and any glimpse of what we see of Sonic's original world is just Green fucking Hill Zone. I mean, I guess it's possible Tangle and Whisper might make a cameo somewhere, but that's about the most I expect to happen. So, not much good this unifying the side series will do. I mean, I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of this dimension stuff. Movies like Ready Player One and Space Jam 2 already kind of soured the fun of this concept. And especially with the Sonic games, what I think of dimension hopping, I don't really think, ooh, what an amazing, mystical, mind-blowing creative world we'll see. But rather I just think, oh, let me guess, another empty limbo with portal to goddamn Green Hill Zone again. Although Prime seems to use it more for generic cartoon tropes. The Pirates episode, the Boo Spooky Mansion episode, etc. You know, whatever. I mean, theoretically, cool things could be done with dimension hopping. We can finally get a good look at Blazer Dimension. He could use this as an excuse to give Sonic's ATM or Underground a stealth series finale. We can finally introduce Fang/Knack into modern Sonic. But, forgive me for being cynical, I doubt any of those will come to be. We'll see. Or maybe they want to do something else. Something like Spider-Man No Way Home, where it's like multiple versions of Sonic coming together. That might be fun. Oh, imagine modern Sonic meeting up with classic Sonic. That'll be a unique event. I mean, we already have Green Hills on a 2D gameplay. Might as well complete the Unholy Trilogy anyway. But if that's the case, it's the eternal duality of Sonic Team. Isn't the fun of having a different dimension that each dimension would represent a different version of the franchise? Like with Spider-Man and having Spider-Man Noir and Spider-Ham. So with Sonic dimension hopping, wouldn't you want contradicting versions of the characters? Like a wacky Sonic, a serious Sonic, etc., etc.? Like, you go out of your way to unify all Sonic characters, all Sonic versions together in one whole, so then the dimension hopping kind of misses the point. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe something else is going on with Sonic Team. I mean, they want to leave the stifling restrictions of having a cohesive world building because they want freedom. Like, Sonic Team is just so filled with brilliant new ideas, so much creativity, so many wild and amazing ideas. Being stuck to this singular universe is just way too restricting. Like, they need freedom, they need a different dimension so they can go completely nuts with their amazing ideas. But so far, I only get the impression that they use the dimension as an excuse to be as lazy as possible instead, so I don't know. Roger, you bastard, why do you think Frontiers is lazy, you ask? Well, ignoring the obvious, let's move to the third and final topic of today's video. Staging! Now, I admit, this is very much a personal thing for me, so maybe some of you might not really care about this thing. Try to keep it short, as far as I'm able to. But when we finally got the first footage of the new game, I was really explicitly looking for this, staging. What is staging, you ask? Well, let me give you an example. When Sonic 06, for example, starts, we get this shot. The town of Soliana. Atmospheric, fireworks, Princess Elise on the high section of the boat, there's dancers, palace staff doing chores, people on the shores cheering her on. Staging, it's setting a mood, putting characters in context. It isn't necessarily doing big, important story things yet, but it's creating a foundation, a footing for all future events. So when later in the game, whenever Elise is referred to as a princess, we remember, oh yes, she's a princess because we saw all this stuff. She isn't just a random girl we just see standing around in an alleyway. Now compare that with Sonic Forces. Eggman is ruler of the entire world! Imagine he got a scene like this, Eggman standing on a parade float. Would he gracefully wave to the audience, or would he make faces and be goofy? Or would he be tense and paranoid? Would Eggman have dancers, like enslaved anthro dancers, or goofy-looking robot dancers? How does his city look like? How would his citizens react? A scene like this would anchor Eggman, ruler of the world, to a visual, but instead we never really get anything like this, and instead Eggman just shows up in a random field in broad daylight to get beaten up by Baby Sonic right in his dramatic introduction. Why? Because that's where the previous level took place in. Later in the story, modern Sonic storms Eggman City to confront Eggman personally. So where do we find him? In his office where he's planning his evil plans? In his epic throne room where he's ruling with an iron fist? No, he's just standing on a random fucking rooftop in the middle of the city. Why? Well, because the previous level was a city, so there you go. There's no staging. Remember those old Nintendo DS cutscenes where you just get a static background with character portraits moving around while they barf out their exposition? So despite these cutscenes being fully animated, it seems like they're still staged like that. I mean, granted, Princess Elise intro was a pre-rendered cutscene. The in-game cutscenes are much more basic. And yet, the older Sonic games still manage to do way more with their in-game cutscenes than what modern Sonic games seem to be able to do. Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic escapes the military by jumping out of a helicopter, or he interferes with Eggman's talk with the president by jumping into his limousine. There's staging going on. There's an interesting visual way to get story across. If Sonic Adventure 2 was made in the 2010s, those scenes would just take place in the middle of the street. The president would just be talking with Eggman in the previous level, so right in the middle of a highway. Jail cells. You know what I like about jails? They're usually inside of a building. You know, so they're more easily to guard and to prevent people from outside to help the prisoners out. That sort of thing. Amy's jail was inside in Sonic Adventure. It led to this nice symbolic shot of E102 seeing the bird behind bars reminding him of the bird trapped inside of his own body. Or Sonic trapped in Sonic Adventure 2. The staging of that gave Amy an opportunity to tease Sonic, and it gave us a little foreshadowing of later plot points. Even in Sonic Unleashed, one of the more modern games, Sonic Team was still capable of building an entire room to put Professor Pickle's jail cell in, suspend it into the air to make it look a little more smarter, as if Pickle could escape he would still break his legs trying to jump down. Now look how nice a jail cell is, and Pickle talks about getting bad cucumber sandwiches. Staging and world building. It's the storytellers letting us know that despite Eggman is kidnapping civilians, he isn't irredeemingly bad and still takes good care of them. Although, to be fair, those cucumbers were an inch too thick, so it's clear Eggman is still very evil, don't get me wrong. You know, the point is, Pickle is actually trapped in jail. They don't just put them randomly standing around the previous level. You don't find Professor Pickle just randomly standing right next to the road, right next to the city. That would be kinda silly, wouldn't it? Cut to modern Sonic. Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal, and Amy's trapped in prison, and she's left outside on a balcony like she's a plotted flower. Okay, so is Lyric constantly hanging around doing his evil plans while standing on that ledge? Or is he just leaving his hostage lounging outside, where Sonic can easily save her while he's inside of his palace? And then, of course, we get to Sonic Frontiers, where Amy's kidnapped again, and yet again, she's just hanging around outside. What is a nice dramatic place to put Amy's jail cell in? Well, just put him right in the fucking middle of a field, why not? This could have been an opportunity for the game to tell us something about this mysterious civilization that used to live on this island, what kind of prison buildings they would have, how diabolical Sage is by putting Amy's jail cell inside of a cliff face or on top of a volcano or some dangerous place or something, some kind of dramatic staging, but no, Amy's just chilling around the grass, okay. I've seen some other cutscenes. There's one where Eggman is in the cyberspace world. He just stands there like a sack of potatoes and then randomly declares cyberspace is to be super cool. End cutscene. Wow. Hey, you know what would be interesting if we watched Eggman actually test how powerful this cyberspace is? Imagine, Eggman goes all Truman Show here and he starts entering buildings he wasn't supposed to, behaving out of character towards civilians he sees. He stops those cars we see driving in the background and starts to inspect those cars up close. If he's like actually investigating this cyberspace and its limitations before declaring how super awesome it is, the statement would feel more legit and more memorable. Although, yeah, I know that Robotnik acting like Jim Carrey is a bit of a stretch, but still. When Sonic Frontiers got its first trailer, I was specifically looking for this. This would be the #1 evidence I needed to see that Sonic Team would actually give a shit about the story this time. Staging! Is it sad that Sonic Lost World is the only time they got prison cells right in modern Sonic? As much as we mocked the stupid black light bulb base of Eggman, at least they actually trapped Tails inside instead of on top of a random rooftop in the middle of nowhere. But anyway, yeah, I know, it's too early to judge Sonic Frontiers. Maybe they have hours of cutscenes and they're just so economic just because they have so much stuff to get through. It's just that the game already gives me a bad feeling about it because it has this very unearned, somber, and alleged mysterious tone, which I can't take seriously after Sonic Forces completely and utterly failed to have even a single interesting scene staged properly. And the original reveal trailer that's just Sonic running through a forest and then be amazed by generic rocky landscape already has my eyebrow raised considerably. Every cutscene I've seen so far seems staged in a purely economic, functional manner, like those old DS or racing spin-off cutscenes, just character models barfing out exposition and a static background. It has me bored. Everyone seems to be really impressed by the voice acting in this game, and indeed, Roger Greg Smith sounds way more somber and sincere this time around. And that's what most people seem to be gravitating toward when it comes to good storytelling, apparently. The voice actor quality, and of course we had Ian Flynn getting the dialogue sharpened up and closer to the actual characters how they're supposed to be. But I am just more visually inclined. I'm way more looking for set pieces, atmosphere, emotions between the characters, and so far I get the feeling that Sonic Frontiers cutscenes are dry and boring and just endless scenes of the cast standing around an empty wasteland, babbling on about MacGuffins and generators and video game collectibles that need to be collected and blah 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 blah. I hope I'm proven wrong. Ian Flynn says it's going to be very emotional and all that, but then again, Sonic Team said a lot of things about Sonic Force's storyline, so who fucking cares at this point? I ain't feeling it at the moment.